June 28th, 1919, Paris, France. The world has just come out of the greatest war in the history of mankind. Over 30 nations have participated in this great war between 1914 and 1918. 8.5 million people died, with 20 million wounded. The landscapes of many European nations were devastated and destroyed. Many towns and cities were unable to function normally anymore. With the Spanish flu also ravaging Europe in 1918, a lot of the anger and ill will flooding Europe was pointed towards none other than Germany.
Germany was, without a doubt, the leading cause for such a treaty to have been signed in the first place. Germany had been the country to start the Great War, and now they were going to be one of the hands in ending it. Hermann Müller was the Prime Minister of Germany at the time of the signing, and the signing of that treaty cost him his career. The German people resented the treaty. Over the course of the war, the Germans had lost 10% of their population of 67 million people.
The Germans were pinned to be the aggressors of the war, and so they were forced to pay a large sum of $33 billion in reparation. Almost every country that fought against wanted severe punishment and wanted revenge. Due to the treaty, Germany lost all of its overseas colonies, 10% of its land, and nearly half of their iron industry. Germany also had massive restrictions put on to its military after the war, like not being allowed an air force or submarines, amongst other things. Despite a peaceful solution and Germany no longer being a legitimate threat to the world, the German people were left unhappy and bitter. David Lloyd George, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, immediately following the end of World War I, was like an in-between man. What he wanted from Germany was a middle ground between the peaceful and most merciful wants of America and the revenge-taken, anger-filled wants of France. The British public at the time resented Germany and wanted them to be severely punished, much like the French views. As a politician, and to ensure he was elected again, he publicly agreed with the citizens' ideas of hang the Kaiser and to make Germany pay. He worried that would provoke another war. Privately, he feared the rise of communism and its possible spread to the West. Lloyd George, as well as other representatives, were more concerned with turning Germany into a barrier between the West and communism. Overall, the British public were generally okay and satisfied with the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. After all, Germany was no longer a threat to the world.
Another major party in the Treaty of Versailles was the United States of America. It was the first time since 1789 that the President delivered a treaty to the Senate, who refused to ratify the treaty due to their lack of involvement with the treaty's formation. While Britain and France wanted to see Germany pay for the damage they caused, Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, was solely focused on peace. Wilson came up with 14 points. Quote, open covenants of peace, absolute freedom of navigation upon the seas, as well as outside territorial waters, the removal, so far as possible, of all economic barriers, etc. Since at this point in time, America was respected by the other nations, they had a lot of influence. President Wilson was the first one to suggest the League of Nations in the first place. He got a lot of support from almost everybody except the Americans. It is for this reason that the United States never joined the League of Nations.
During the making of the Treaty of Versailles, Italy left, unhappy with their share of the spoils from Germany. Italy wanted territory from Austria and all across the Balkan Peninsula. However, the other nations felt Italy's demands were unreasonable and impossible to meet. After much debate, it was decided that Italy would sign the Treaty of Versailles and gain a permanent seat on the League of Nations, the land of Tyrol, and a share of the German reparations. Though many deemed this a fair deal, many Italians were dissatisfied.
The peace conference started in January of 1919. The French President Raymond Poincaré picked the date of January 18th to begin this conference. Quote, you hold in your hands the future of the world, unquote, President Poincaré told the assembled delegates on January 18th, 1919. And indeed, they did. France was filled with rage and wanted to use the treaty to cripple Germany. They believed that by weakening Germany, they were promised security. Georges Clemenceau was opting for the harshest punishments for Germany as a revenge of what the country has done to France and its people. He wanted Germany to return Alsace-Lorraine and an independent Rhineland. Clemenceau was not in support of the League of Nations. France did not leave Versailles empty-handed. In addition to gaining and having land returned to them, they achieved the full ownership of the coal fields in the SAAR Basin for 15 years. The final victory for France was that the Germans were now only allowed 100,000 men in their army and 6 battleships.
The signing of this treaty was the near-perfect example of diplomacy and debate. Over 30 representatives from their respective nations came together to discuss the official and peaceful ending of the Great War. It's amazing to think that the Treaty of Versailles was able to diplomatically lead to an era of brief peace following the most devastating war the world had seen up until that point, at least until 1939.